Bonsoir, Roxane. Hi, Roxane. How are you doing?
Hi, Bab. Bonsoir. Good on you. Amazing.
Yeah, very, very good. As I mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we keep the community engaged till the end. So we put you there not because you're not important, but because you're the important piece to make this a perfect wrap. So really excited to hear about. I mean, if you've been, sorry, wow,
It's getting late.
guys, this is it. Yeah. So yeah, if you've been living under a rock, then our Roxane is gonna share with you what AnyShift is. But if not, she'll explain what AnyShift is doing in the context of Infra. And yeah, I think this is it. The floor is yours, Roxane.
Thank you so much. Thanks. So yeah, nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Roxane, CEO and co-founder of AnyShift. We are building AI DevOps agents that can actually take a GitHub issue and create a pull request out of it. And today I will speak about the importance of context for AI application when it comes to your infrastructure. This is a subject we are dealing with day to day at AnyShift, and why context is so important. And spoiler alert, your infrastructure is a graph, and so you should see it as is. So I'm just gonna begin with a small introduction about how I'm going to speak about infrastructure and AI context. Like the first part of this presentation is to explain why it's so important, and for infrastructure as code generation especially, and why very often it falls short when you use Copilot, Cursor to actually generate your infrastructure as code code. Then a small live demo to show why in practice it doesn't work. And the last part would be how to actually create those graphs in practice. How to actually get some remediation to this shortcome of generating the right infrastructure as code relative to your infrastructure. So the first part I wanted to speak about would be kind of a concrete example on why infrastructure as code generation still doesn't work that well when you use it in your favorite tools. You can use GitHub Copilot, Cursor, etc. And very often it's good. It creates something that makes sense. But it would be snippets of code, but it's never wow. It's often, why not? And here I want to explain why. So to do so, I took a simple instruction to actually do kind of a day-to-day task for an SRE, such as please create an AWS or a VPC peering connection in Terraform. The first person I would ask this task to would be a developer. Here would be an example of the code that could have been created with my VPC peering connection. So here you can see my two VPCs with hard-coded values. Very often, and I don't know, for those of you that have large code bases, but you will have hard-coded values and also ClickUps resources in your cloud because it's never perfect. And your developer very potentially doesn't know the good practices. Obviously, it's not good to have hard-coded values in your code, but did something that worked and moved to something else. The right thing that he should have done would be to actually create some dynamic dependencies to avoid a breaking change in the future. So here, this is what I asked the same thing to GitHub Copilot. And GitHub Copilot is slightly more aware of the good practices than my dev and has created the right dependencies. So dynamic dependencies, not static ones. You can see it here. The thing is that GitHub Copilot doesn't know where to fetch my main VPC for this VPC peering connection. So what it's going to try to do is to continue code generation as a good LLM would do, And here is generating a new VPC, which would work in practice, but which is not realistic. I want my main VPC to be referred to. And this is a thing with LLMs. They don't have like the entire context of your infrastructure. And so they're missing those dependencies that are needed to actually like make the right references. So the question that I guess a lot of you would have would be like, okay, so could Cursor do it? Because Cursor is actually a perfect tool to make those mapping between different code files. This example here is to highlight what I expected. I actually wanted to have like a data source referring, so right here, referring to my main VPC, which was already defined and running in defined in another repository. This is the actual code that someone like in my SRE team, DevOps team would have done. But let's go back to my previous example with my developer who has hard-coded some values. We all have some not the best practices in our code, but like you will have some hard-coded values, intricate modules, and also like live resources that are living with no definition within your code. Just define ClickUps in your cloud console. And because of that, when I'm actually trying to make this VPC peering connection with the right data source, here what you can see is that a tool such as Cursor is strictly incapable of making this reference, this connection. Why? It's because those IDs are actually only IDs defined in the cloud, live cloud data, and that Cursor doesn't have any ID of. It just has the code in mind. So you cannot do the connection between this ID and this VPC. And to make this connection, a Cursor or like any other like AI agent, we need to have like full cloud access to all the different accounts, etc., and to the IDs and ends of the resources. So I just want to put to highlight it in a small demo. Spoiler alert, I'm going to show a little bit of AnyShift because we are building this AI context for your infrastructure. And now it's going to be fun because live demo part is always the funniest part. The example I want to take is actually a pretty simple example, but just to show like the limitation that you can have depending of the tools you use. AnyShift, we are building some AI DevOps agents that can answer like to question about your cloud between different sources that you can see here: GitHub, AWS, Datadog, etc. And here, so I want to ask, do I have unsecure IAM users? Insecure, sorry for my English, IAM users. And it's going to begin the thinking. And now I'm going to do it as well in Cursor. And I need to do a small change of screen. Share screen. Share my entire screen. Sorry for the infinite loop. And normally you should see it. And now I'm going to ask to Cursor as well, lists, do I have IAM users that are insecure? And what you can see here is that Cursor is actually going to query my infrastructure as code code bases. You can see it to the left. I have like my TF AWS, the one for Cloudflare, the repository for Cloudflare. And it's going to query like for all my repositories and search for the different IAM users. Actually, here it's having some hallucination and searching the web. And that's the fun part about live demo. But so let's see if I stop it. And I can actually show you previous chat history that I made. Perfect. So when it didn't hallucinate, what it found in my different files. So here in my IAM user files, would be like to read the different users, and you found like S. Jordan and Roxane Fischer having some obvious security issues and uninterrupted access. I also have like my Anivo user who doesn't have like all the security checks, and some insecure temp goof user and Terraform goof. Everything is right here, and this is from the code. Now let's go back to AnyShift and to Annie. So I'm gonna share. Oh, actually, it was actually working, but sharing my screen on AnyShift, which is this one. Sorry for the little interruption. But so, do I have insecure IAM users? AnyShift or Annie is answering as well that I have Stephen Jordan, Roxane Fischer, and Anivo that are not correctly configured. And here you can see that you would also get the links to my AWS console, because Annie doesn't only have like the context of the code, but also the context of the cloud. But what I want to show here is that, more importantly, what it found here is that I have like a temporary goof user that Cursor didn't find, that has some accesses, but which is not defined into the code. And here you can see my temporary goof user with administrator access, which is obviously the wrong practice. And because Cursor didn't have like the cloud context, it couldn't have found this temporary goof user, which was obviously a security issue, but then couldn't be capable of actually from that make a remediation, a pull request to actually like either like create the right infrastructure like code to define this goof user, which is only living in the cloud for now, but also like change the accesses. That's a very small example to see how the context that's going to feed your AI is going to be like a game changer for the generation that you're going to make out of it. And so now, when we come to the third part, which is how we actually like create this context, I want to put a strong emphasis about the fact that your infrastructure is a graph. And it's kind of simple when you see it like that. Your infrastructure is made of different resources, an EC2 instance linked to an IAM user within a VPC, connected with different edges. And so you can see it easily as a graph with like the resources, which are nodes, and the connection, which are edges. This graph is actually super complex. When you need to map your entire infrastructure, it's a huge monster with multiple accounts, very often multiple clouds, tens of thousands of resources, and not even speaking about all the microservices running within. So it's actually more looking like that, like it's actually a subset of your graph infrastructure, but still. And the thing is, to create such a graph, the two most important parts when you need to create like for code generation is first to define a meaningful edge. Oh, sorry, it's actually a typo. Edge labels. It's not the same connection when you connect a VPC with subnet or a VPC with some kind of the metadata that you add within, or the connection with an EC2 instance. Some edges would be like, this would be configured by, this one would be linked with. So it's not exactly the same properties that actually make and define your infrastructure. The second part, which is super important for code generation, is making this deterministic mapping between your cloud resources and your infrastructure as code to be capable of mapping the right resources to the code definition, as we have seen before. I just want to finish this with how to build such graph or such context with two main areas with the pros and cons. The first one is about building a GraphDB, which is what we do at AnyShift. We build and maintain this deep knowledge graph of the infrastructure that we then query for code generation and incident remediation. It's great because like you have your entire graph in context with all the dependencies, with super high quality data, but hard to do it like within a team internally because it's super like takes a lot of time to maintain. A second part of areas of not research but development that is a great tool already is to use MCP servers to actually fetch this live context within your code. So for instance, if you use like an AWS MCP server, you can already have a subpart of your live cloud resources, which is great, to have some infos that you wouldn't have with Cursor or the code itself. It's easier to build in-house, but you will still have a fragmented view of your infrastructure. You cannot understand all the relationship, and it cannot scale indefinitely because you will get some rate limits when you do too many API calls with your MCP server. And just as a conclusion, really want to emphasize on the importance of context. Context is king, garbage in, garbage out. When it comes to infrastructure or any other field, your LLMs to create the right code need to have the right context. And because your infrastructure is a graph, it should be created as is. And that's it for me. I think it's really important, and I really thank the AI Native DevCon for making such a great event. AnyShift and Tessel and all the other like kind of partners in this field are for me like building end-to-end this context, like this AI for the future, which I believe is really like awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Roxane. Really, really insightful talk. And yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see how some of the blockers that you mentioned with MCP, like how that evolves within the infra space and what AnyShift will do in the ecosystem. So yeah, extremely insightful. Thank you so much. And thank you to the entire community for, I just saw in comments, some people are coming from Hawaii, from Singapore. It's just like a very, very cool group of people. So just wanted to say that we appreciate you for being here.